Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The stage is set. The United States and Iran are meeting in the Sultanate of Oman to renegotiate a nuclear deal. And considering the threats and ultimatums that Donald Trump has issued, the possibility of an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, if the negotiations were to break down, is very real. But keep in mind that an Iranian nuclear deal had already been negotiated in 2015. It was then called the JCPOA, or the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which Iran had negotiated with the United States and 5 other world powers. But when Donald Trump had become the president in his first term, he had slammed the JCPOA as the worst negotiated deal in American history, and had unilaterally dragged the United States out of the agreement, and had also imposed crippling sanctions on Iran as part of his strategy of maximum pressure. So what new deal does Donald Trump now have to offer for Iran? And if negotiations break down, Donald Trump has said that Israel will take the lead in the military attack on Iran. But the irony is this: Israel itself is a nation with nuclear weapons. Although Tel Aviv has never formally either accepted or denied possessing nuclear weapons, the United States has taken upon itself the mantle of being the nuclear policeman of the world. But the question is this: why are there different rules for different nations when they pursue nuclear technology? And will there be war over Iran's pursuit of its uranium enrichment? Our next report gets you the details.
They became very strong very fast. They sold massive amounts of oil to China and everybody else who would not buy the oil when I was president, because we said, don't buy the oil. And they became very rich very quickly. But they're not weak. They're not weak. They're strong. Doesn't mean they won't be weak. But you know what? We just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That is Donald Trump's red line for the Iranians. So the two sides meet for talks in Oman. Iran too has made its position clear. It will not be browbeat, will not be bullied, but will negotiate on equal terms for a fair and honorable agreement.
We participated with the necessary seriousness. Our intention is to reach a fair and honorable agreement from a position of equality. If the other side has entered with the same approach, then God willing, there will be a chance for a preliminary understanding that could lead to a negotiated path.
But there are many within Iran who are questioning on whether the United States can even be trusted to stick to the terms of the agreement. Because the last time the Iranian nuclear deal had been struck between Iran and the United States, along with 5 other world powers, it was the United States under Donald Trump who had violated it. So what is the guarantee that the United States will stick to its side of the bargain this time round? But the United States isn't bluffing.
Thank you very much. This will make America much safer.
In the weeks leading up to the negotiations in Oman, the United States has moved at least 6 of its stealth B-2 nuclear bombers to the US-British military base of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. America's Arab allies have declined the use of US military bases on their soil or their airspace to stage attacks on Iran. The B-2 stealth nuclear bomber is an interesting choice. It can carry America's heaviest bombs and also its nuclear bombs. This is hard nuclear saber rattling by the United States. One wrong step by Iran would give the United States the casus belli to act against it. In 2003, the United States, under the then President George W. Bush, had staged the devastating invasion of Iraq on the premise that Saddam Hussein was developing weapons of mass destruction. More than 1 million Iraqis ended up getting killed because of the American invasion in search of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, which were ultimately never found. America's ally Israel has also carried out airstrikes on nuclear reactors in the Middle East to ensure that no other nation in the Middle East can develop nuclear technology. On the 5th of September in 2007, the Israeli F-15 and F-16 fighter jets had swooped down in the dead of the night on Syria's Deir ez-Zor and had bombed a cube-like structure that was tucked away in the desert valley. The operation was called Out of the Box or Operation Orchard, and according to reports, the Israeli airstrike had destroyed a nuclear reactor that was just months away from completion. 44 years ago, on the 7th of June in 1981, the Israeli fighter jets had bombed an unfinished Iraqi nuclear reactor 17 kilometers outside the Iraqi capital. Codenamed variously as Operation Babylon or Operation Opera. This Israeli attack came about a year after Iran had partially destroyed the Iraqi Osiris-class nuclear reactor in 1980 in a strike called Operation Scorching Sword to prevent Saddam Hussein from acquiring nuclear weapons. Operation Opera also established the Begin Doctrine, named after Menachem Begin, the founder of the Likud Party and the 6th Prime Minister of Israel. The Begin Doctrine explicitly states that preventive strikes on nuclear facilities are not an anomaly, but a precedent for every future government in Israel. So the United States and Israel now have the Iranian nuclear assets in their crosshairs, but Iran's nuclear sites are buried hundreds of feet under the mountains and reinforced concrete. And military experts say the United States will have to use some very heavy weapons to pierce through the reinforcements to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. On the face of it, Iran insists its nuclear program is meant for peaceful civilian use for generation of electricity. So the question now is, will diplomacy triumph and the United States and Iran will again strike a nuclear deal? Or will the United States, as Donald Trump keeps repeating, resort to the military option, having learned no lessons from the disastrous invasion of Iraq 2 decades ago on exactly the same premise? Amidst the escalating fears of a global conflict, the United States has quietly fast-tracked production of one of its deadliest nuclear weapons in decades, the B61-13 Gravity Bomb. Reportedly, the gravity bomb being developed in response to the rising tensions with China, Russia and the Middle East is 24 times more powerful than the bomb that the Americans dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. While the proponents of the bomb claim that it enhances deterrence, its critics have warned of the risks posed by the escalating nuclear brinkmanship. Our next report gets you more details.
The day that we began to make America wealthy again.
While the world's attention is fixed on President Donald Trump's tariff war, American nuclear scientists in a hush-hush affair are busy building in New Mexico, a weapon so powerful that it dwarfs the destruction witnessed in Hiroshima. The B61-13 Gravity Bomb, which was originally due for production in 2026, has now been innovatively planned to be delivered 7 months earlier than expected, a 25% cut in production time. Not only will it be delivered earlier than expected, it will be a far more lethal bomb. A single B61-13 Gravity Bomb carries a yield of up to 360 kilotons or 360,000 tons of TNT. To put things into perspective, the little boy dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of 15 kilotons. Built with modern precision in mind, the new bomb is unguided, a classic gravity bomb dropped from the sky. It is meant to penetrate bunkers, take out hardened command centers, and act as deterrents against adversaries. According to the Federation of Atomic Scientists, it is expected that 50 bombs are likely to be produced in 2025 itself. The B61-13 Gravity Bomb will gradually replace the older models such as the B61-12, currently stationed in NATO bases across Europe. But why is the US building this new B61-13 nuclear weapon? Considering US President Donald Trump has already threatened Iran with bombing and even expressed interest in taking over Gaza and has even warned of a third world war if the war in Ukraine does not stop, it appears to be a preparation for a tripolar nuclear world order with both China and Russia as atomic peers. Though the B61-13 Gravity Bomb might strengthen America's strategic posture, The fear is it has sent the world hurtling back into nuclear brinksmanship.
Again.
For the first time in the Russia-Ukraine war, Chinese nationals have been captured by Ukraine, fighting on behalf of Russia at the front lines. Now, Ukraine managed to capture 2 of the Chinese nationals alive. The Chinese envoy in Kiev was summoned for an explanation. Even at a time when talks for a deal are underway, the intensity of the war only appears to be increasing. Another 160,000 soldiers are being mobilized by Vladimir Putin. Simultaneously, Moscow is also preparing for a new spring offensive. Over 67,000 soldiers have been mobilized for an assault on Sumy and Kharkiv. The infectious optimism of Donald Trump that he'll strike a deal and usher in peace almost feels irrelevant for the people on the ground, because most Ukrainians are bracing themselves with the expectation that things are about to get worse, way worse, before they can get better with a Trump brokered deal for Ukraine. Our next report gets more details.
This is an image that no one expected to see in the Ukrainian war theater. 2 Chinese mercenaries fighting for the Russian army, captured from Tarasivka and Belohorivka in the Donetsk region. Beijing is a close ally of Moscow, but so far it has never publicly admitted that China is directly aiding in the Kremlin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It is not immediately clear whether the captured Chinese men are regular soldiers, but Zelensky was unapologetic. He said 2 out of the 6 Chinese soldiers fighting alongside the Russians had been captured so far, while many more Chinese nationals, he insisted, are at the Ukrainian front lines fighting for the Russian forces.
Accordingly, there are documents, there are their passports, there are even credit cards. These are citizens of China. I think this is a very important element. I think the United States of America needs to pay more attention to what is happening today, and we expect after this that this is another country that militarily supports the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On the Russian side, this is another one after Iran and the North Korean soldiers.
Iran has backed the Russians by sending artillery shells, short-range ballistic missiles, and its now famous Shahed delta-wing drones. The North Koreans, besides munitions, have sent in almost 12,000 soldiers and 500 officers so far to the Ukrainian front lines. And the presence of the Chinese nationals has now added a whole new dimension to the war.
I would like to reiterate that China is not the creator of the Ukrainian crisis, nor is it a party concerned. We are a firm supporter and active promoter of peaceful settlement of the crisis. The Chinese government has always requested its citizens to stay away from armed conflict zones and avoid being in armed conflicts in any form, and in particular, to refrain from participating in military action on either side. We advise the parties concerned to correctly and soberly understand the role of China and to not publish irresponsible comments.
For anyone who is expecting a swift end to this war, there is a rude reality check that awaits them. Vladimir Putin is again mobilizing another 160,000 soldiers at this crucial juncture in the war. Ukraine's northeastern frontier is under increasing pressure. Russia has pressed 67,000 soldiers for a spring offensive on Sumy and Kharkiv. Ukraine has been steadily ramping up its tactical missile production facilities, along with workshops to produce small bombs and drones. There are pitched battles being fought in the trenches, where the Russians claim they are taking on the Ukrainian special forces. The final chapter of the Ukraine war is yet to be written. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff is engaged in parleys with the Russian president at St. Petersburg. But on the streets of Ukraine, very few people believe negotiations will bring lasting peace, for those who have been devastated by this war.
Once perceived as a beacon of stability in South America, Ecuador, in a short span of just 5 years, has transformed into one of the world's most violent nations and a major drug trafficking hub. Now, foreign drug cartels have been lured to its shores owing to its strategic position, large ports, lax security and endemic corruption. Now, despite the government declaring war against the narco gangs, the fight against the lucrative drug trade has proven so far to be a mammoth task. Severity of the situation can be gauged by the fact that despite not producing the drug, 70% of the world's cocaine now flows through Ecuadorian ports. Under the shadow of the surging drug violence and a worrying explosion in the number of local gangs, the result of Sunday's presidential election assumes even greater significance. Our next report gets you more details.
The small South American nation of Ecuador was once perceived as a haven of peace. However, in the past 5 years, things have taken a turn for the worse. Its strategic position, sandwiched between neighboring Colombia and Peru, the world's two largest producers of cocaine, combined with its large ports, lax security, and endemic corruption have lured foreign drug cartels to its shore. Consequently, the once safe Andean nation has turned into a battleground for the who's who of mafias from Albania to Italy to Mexico. Reportedly, the Albanian mafia has the upper hand and are in control of much of the cocaine flow from South America to Europe. In addition to this, a plethora of homegrown groups with striking names and ferocious reputations have also mushroomed. To name a few, the Los Freddy Kruegers cause nightmares in the streets, the Ugly Women's headquarters run jails, and the Peaky Blinders try to rule the waves of a key coastal zone. A campaign of extortion, robbery, kidnapping, and murder has terrorized the citizens.
Honestly, we're already living in fear because you can't go out anymore. Everyone's lives are at risk. Our children, our parents, all of us are in danger here. There are so many assaults and robberies. They break into houses, steal bikes, whatever they can find. They go for whatever's easiest to take.
According to the Interior Ministry, Ecuador recorded more than 1 death per hour in the months of January and February this year. January alone recorded 781 murders, making it the deadliest month in recent years. Many of these deaths were related to the illegal drug trade. What has been the response of the Ecuadorian police to the escalating drug violence? A record amount of illicit drugs, nearly 300 tons, was seized last year, the majority of it being cocaine. But the record bust also indicates that total exports are on the rise. Given the dire situation, security inevitably is the central issue of Sunday's presidential runoff between incumbent Daniel Noboa and leftist candidate Luisa Gonzalez. The incumbent 37-year-old Daniel Noboa, standing for a second term, made fighting criminal gangs one of his main priorities and deployed the military to tackle gang-related violence. On the 7th of April in Guayaquil, he asked his supporters for more time to implement his Phoenix security plan and claimed that military deployments, harsher sentencing, and arrests of gang leaders had reduced violent deaths by 15% last year.
We have regained control of the prisons. We have seized more than 293 tons of drugs, arrested dangerous leaders, and we have managed to reduce the rate of violent deaths in areas of high conflict. But we cannot let our guard down. We will not give in even an inch to the crime.
Noboa's leftist rival Luisa Gonzalez has announced that she will fight crime by adding 20,000 police officers, deploying anti-money laundering technology, and sending thousands of peace-focused social workers to violent neighborhoods to help create jobs and keep kids, often recruited by gangs, in school.
We are going to put a lot of emphasis on security. For those who violate us, who sow fear in us, who rob us, who kill us, who extort us, a heavy hand. The full weight of the state will be on those who sow violence against us.
For a 17 million strong nation, anxious and panic-stricken, the situation today is comparable to the chaos of 1990s Colombia, and it will take more than strong words to rein in the drug cartels running riot.
More than 40 people were killed in suspected intercommunal violence in central Nigeria on the 2nd of April, reportedly in the religiously and ethnically mixed north-central Plateau state. Unidentified attackers armed with guns struck multiple villages on Wednesday, killing at least about 40 people. Nigerian military said that the troops alongside local vigilante groups engaged with the attackers and efforts are ongoing to apprehend the fleeing criminals. A couple of days later, the Plateau State's Information Commissioner Joyce Ramnap, while condemning the killings, claimed that important arrests have been made, though no figure was provided. Our next report gets you more.
Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria, is roughly divided in half between the largely Muslim north and mostly Christian south. In the north-central Plateau state, though millions of Nigerians of different backgrounds live side by side, intercommunal violence often flares up due to land disputes between Muslim Fulani herders and mostly Christian farmers. Even the urban centers have witnessed small disputes devolving into massacres along communal lines. Thousands of people have been killed in this turbulent history of Christian-Muslim violence. In the aftermath of the latest killings in Bokos in the Plateau state, panic-stricken people carrying their belongings were seen fleeing their villages. Those lucky enough to survive the attack narrated the ordeal that they had to endure.
Hands back and my leg just put inside one bag. This is what we call katanko. And one big stone. They tied. After they finish, one of them said they should slaughter me before they throw it inside the well. The senior of them said no. Since they already tied me, there is no need to slaughter me. So they throw me head down into the well.
Why has the Plateau state experienced recurrent violence? Experts are of the opinion that the drivers of conflict in the Plateau state are often complicated, with contentious issues of land, ethnicity, religion and political power often cited as reasons. As the nation of more than 200 million people continued to grow, so did the amount of land used by the farmers. Whereas the grazing routes increasingly came under stress from climate change. As land grabbing, illegal mining and political tensions escalated, pushing people further into conflict, weak policing and inefficient governance didn't help matters. Last May, around 40 people were killed and houses were set ablaze in the town of Wase in the Plateau state. And during Christmas in 2023, about 200 people were killed during an attack on a majority Christian village, escalating tensions in the state. Given such dismal scenario, the Nigerian religious leaders have sought the refuge of religion in a bid to foster national unity. In the commercial capital of Lagos, at God, the Creator of the World Interfaith Ministry, Muslim and Christian believers can be seen praying and singing in unison.
This place is a temple of the Most High God, a house of prayer for any human that will reason together so that there will be peace in Nigeria.
For a country fraught with communal tension, a common place of worship where the focus is on commonalities rather than differences is an excellent initiative and the need of the hour.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.